Welcome inside this edition of Big Ten Today, fueled by Gatorade. Rick Pizzo, thrilled to be joined by Jake Butt. Now, Jake, you know I'm a hockey guy, so I'm really fired up for the Frozen Four. You're a football guy, and you have the defending national champions from your hometown getting set for their spring game this coming weekend. And anytime you have a defending national champ, but specifically when you look at this Ohio State team and the roster turnover, so many storylines heading into this spring game for the Bucks.
Yeah, when it's true for any national champion, but especially Ohio State, the state of their program, the investment they have, and the way they've recruited. I think the question and the feeling I get out of Columbus is, hey, let's go ahead and run this back. They have an opportunity, seriously, from a talent, resource, ingredient standpoint, to potentially be a dynasty like Nick Saban and those Alabama teams. They have all the ingredients to continue to make deep runs. Starting this year, quarterback, the ultimate question.
That is the big story. Ohio State spring game coming up this Saturday, defending the first national championship since the first year of the college football playoff era. In the offseason, Ryan Day inking that 7-year extension and telling me when I talked to him on Wednesday, of course I feel like a different guy. Now, folks don't just think I can do it, they know I can do it. He'll have to do it with 2 new coordinators. Chip Kelly, gone. Jim Knowles gone, replaced by Brian Hartline, who's been on staff for a while, and Matt Patricia. And, of course, that quarterback competition, Julian Sayin, the transfer from Alabama. Everybody thought he'd be the guy, but apparently Lincoln Kienholz has looked really good, pushing Sayin, the former 5-star, right now in the quarterback competition. We'll get into some position-by-position conversation in just a bit, but I want to pick up where you left off about this dynasty conversation. And there's never a rebuild at Ohio State. There is always a reload. Are they truly in a situation where even after all these departures, 10 guys potentially from the defense, you're talking about Emeka Egbuka being gone, the running back room being rebuilt, that they could start to build a dynasty this season?
Everything you just said is true, and yet, there's such an embarrassment of riches in Columbus. I mean, you can make a run when you have the best offensive player in Jeremiah Smith and the best defensive player in Caleb Downs. Yes, there's new faces on the defensive side of the ball, replacing a significant amount of their starters. It's still a veteran defense. These are still experienced guys that have gotten repetitions, and they're all 4 or 5 stars. I think back, when I would play Ohio State, and this is just the mark of a great team, we'd play Ohio State and an injury would happen, for example. Someone would go down and then in comes a new guy and you exhale a little bit like, oh, thank God that star player, we don't have to deal with them. An NFL player would walk off the bench and onto the field. That's what they have in Ohio State. They got a good mixture of experienced veterans and then young, hungry 5 stars. This spring practice, what Ryan Day has said, he said it's been the most physical spring ball that he's been a part of since he became head coach at Ohio State. And I think that's a good indication of the mentality for this team going forward.
Well, I think that was fascinating when he told me that on Wednesday, because I asked the question following up on something that he had said after the year and how long the season was. And he said, if we're going to do this again and get back to the national championship game and basically play what amounts to an NFL schedule, we probably have to take it easier during spring ball. They're not doing that. And I think part of the reason is because you taste that national championship and you enjoy that flavor so much that you'll do anything to get it back. And I think that's why they're pushing like this. And pushing like this makes many believe that they'll be the favorites once again, not just in the Big Ten, but to win it all.
It's a great point. And you give a ton of credit to Ryan Day to be fluid in that sense, where he starts off saying, man, maybe we got to take our foot off the gas this offseason. But then looking at the makeup of his team and saying, wait a second, we're replacing all these guys on defense. They need to tackle. They need repetitions. They need physicality. And then, of course, with the quarterbacks, what better way to evaluate than having physical practices? They will not be live this weekend in the spring game. Last Saturday, they had a scrimmage, and they let the quarterbacks be live. So it helps the defense. It also helps them evaluate that quarterback position. It's a different beast when you have the chance to be hit and be sacked.
Yeah, I did think it was interesting. They were live, but they were soft live, except for Tavian St. Clair. They let the new guy, they let him get beat up a little bit because he is probably a guy that's going to have to sit behind and learn from Sayin or Kienholz. But again, to your point about an embarrassment of riches, you have Sayin, who was a 5-star and the top quarterback in the recruiting class 2 years ago, didn't work out at Alabama, lands at Ohio State. Then you have St. Clair, who's the number 2 quarterback in this year's recruiting class, and he's a guy who's willing to come in and try to win a job. It just goes to show you that it doesn't matter how many players at your position are at Ohio State. It doesn't matter how many stars they have. People want to go there, and that'll be the competition at quarterback between 3 remarkably talented guys.
This is just a well-oiled machine. Like the system, the offensive system in Columbus is as good as it gets. If I was a quarterback recruit, or if I was a guy that was in the transfer portal, Ohio State would be the top of my list.
Yep.
If I was a quarterback where I would want to go to develop and put up stats. You look at this in a few different ways when you're evaluating the quarterback position. So first team, second team, third team. When you look at the skill positions, there's really not a huge drop. Like if you're throwing to Jeremiah Smith, okay, great. But then you go to your second unit, and all of a sudden those are elite wide receivers. Even your third unit, the brand new early enrollee freshman like a Quincy Porter, that guy's an NFL player. So from a skill position standpoint, you still feel good. The key though, there is a drop off first unit to second unit with the offensive line. So that's where, when you talk about live or soft live, getting those reps behind different offensive line units, watching the quarterbacks, how they navigate the pocket, how they change protection. We know they can throw to the talented wide receivers outside, but it's all those other ingredients that matter. And talking to Brian Hartline in our coach meetings this week and Ryan Day, they say consistency is the word that matters. Really what I hear when they say that is you're trying to account for all these different variables. You can't just look at raw numbers because first unit is different than second unit. But which guy is consistent in his process in doing the things that he's coached to do, regardless of the outside variables, that's the guy they're going to ultimately go with.
And whoever it is will have a new face calling plays. New in the sense that Brian Hartline will have an opportunity to call plays. Another thing I got to talk to Ryan Day about a little bit, because with Chip Kelly gone after 1 year, I think Ryan felt very comfortable ceding a job that he used to own in that play calling and was known as one of the best play callers because he had known Chip forever, all the way to their days together as player coach back at New Hampshire. But this is a different scenario. And Ryan said, listen, this is Brian's chance. Yeah. He knows this offense. He knows the way our program operates. He played here. He played in the NFL. He has coached here. He knows what we want to do. Knowing what you want to do and actually putting it on paper and executing, very different. And I think it's probably, to me, maybe the most fascinating of these storylines to watch play out.
Right, and the urgency and the challenge is only amplified from the fact you're introducing a new quarterback, right? Like those are the two driving indicators.
That's
of
not C.J. Stroud you're calling plays for here.
Right. Maybe not. Who knows? I mean, they got extreme talent. But again, talking to Coach Day and even talking to Coach Hartline this week, he feels he's in a different place from when he got here. Even from last year, 2-3 years ago, he's seen an insane amount of growth. And, Ryan, when we asked him, he felt like, Ryan and Coach Hartline have been together for so long. Ryan sees Brian as an extension of him. They see the game the same way. They've been in this system for so long. They talk the same language. Really get the sense that Coach Day has trust in Brian and is going to give him this opportunity to succeed. And we talked about the talent. What a great opportunity to call plays and get the ball out to those guys. You did bring up a point about, and I wanted to spin back to this because speaks to the culture and what Ohio State has of guys choosing to come to Columbus when it's a hard decision. I want to point out Quincy Porter, early enrollee freshman, Devin Sanchez, 5-star defensive back. If Quincy Porter goes anywhere else in the Big Ten, really anywhere else in the nation, Quincy Porter would be a starting wide receiver and would be the star player on that offense.
WR1.
He's that good.
Yeah.
As a early enrollee freshman, Devin Sanchez would be cornerback 1 as a early enrollee freshman. And yet both those guys came to Columbus where they're likely not going to start this year. They're not going to have a ton of production. Think about what Ryan Day has established there in Columbus from a culture and identity standpoint to attract those two players. Those are just two instances that highlight the bigger picture of where Ohio State's at.
Let's turn to the defense and the coordinator swap there. Jim Knowles off to Penn State. He's replaced by Matt Patricia. And this is fascinating because almost all of Patricia's experience, and it is vast and it is championship level in the NFL with the New England Patriots, where he made his bones underneath Bill Belichick. And he kind of brings that NFL mentality that Chip Kelly brought a little bit on the offensive side last year. He knows NFL scheduling. If this season gets as long as last year does, he can add some value there. I think this is a little bit of an out of the box, but I think a hire that has a great chance to work really well.
That was the first thing that Ryan said to us at our coach meetings, too, is just the value that Coach Patricia brings, knowing that, hey, he's comfortable with long seasons, 16, 17 games, a full preseason, deep playoff runs, how you manage that and how you manage the relationship with your players. He's also is one of the smartest coaches in football, highly intelligent. So you always have a little bit of a concern of, when you go to the NFL, that's your full-time job. You can meet for 8 hours a day and practice and walk through. That's just the rules of the NCAA. That's not the case. So I asked him, do you have to dumb down or do you have to change anything about your playbook? And he felt like the players in Columbus, eager to learn, intelligent, clearly talented. We've said that a number of times. I didn't get the sense that he's having to make really sweeping changes of who he is as a play caller and what he wants the defense to be. So it's a great hire, talent across the board. That's going to be, besides the quarterbacks, that's the other key thing to watch is how quickly can these new pieces, guys that are experienced once again, but new in the sense they're be starting for Ohio State, how quickly can they get up to speed?
Let's dive into some individual players. On the offensive side, you have not just arguably, clearly the best wide receiver in college football, and a guy who, during his true freshman year, every NFL scout, analyst, draft expert knew he was NFL ready during his freshman season. Yeah. He would have been put on any NFL team and probably would have been wide receiver 2 or 3 at worst on every NFL team, and that's Jeremiah Smith. I asked Ryan Day, how can he get even better? And he said that Jeremiah has not stopped working since the moment that the national championship game ended. You start to think about this kid's ceiling. Yeah. I know he's going to be double and triple covered. I just don't really think it matters.
I don't think he has a ceiling. Like he can whatever he wants to be.
It's like solar system outer space.
Like we can talk about ceilings for everybody else, but not for Jeremiah. He'd be the starting wide receiver. Chip told us, I think we called their game like week 2 or 3 last year. We asked Chip Kelly about it. This was week 2 or week 3. We knew he was good, but we didn't have the body of work of the full season. Chip, coming from the NFL as well, said, guys, he would start and be the wide receiver 1 on most NFL teams. It speaks to his talent. So how can he improve? He's a bigger body wide receiver, so he's their X-wide receiver, solo backside, get him running vertical down the field, one-on-one matchups. They've been working him in the slot a lot more this year. So that's the first step he can take. And we saw that, the big touchdown against Oregon, they motioned him down in the slot. He caught one in the flat. But I think a limiting factor won't be him. It's actually going to be the quarterbacks. Yep. He can do anything. Coach Hartline can draw it up for him. It's going to be those quarterbacks that decide, what type of creative things they can do with Jeremiah.
If there's a player on the other side that comes closest to matching Jeremiah in terms of his talent and impact, it's clearly Caleb Downs, who last year made a massive difference coming over from Alabama. He was not just an impact playmaker, but he kind of quickly assimilated himself into a defense that returned so many starters. Yeah. That's not an easy situation because you had guys like Cody Simon and Jack Sawyer and JTT and Denzel Burke who had been on that team for so long and had a chemistry amongst themselves. Yet Caleb seemed to fit right in. And now I think Matt Patricia looks at him and says, you're not just our best player. You need to be the leader of this defense and the unquestioned leader from day one.
Absolutely. When I was playing it, when you're talking about like elite special, when I got to Denver, the Broncos, in the NFL, everybody's good. And then you have a guy like Von Miller who is just so clearly above the rest. Like that's what's special. That's Jeremiah Smith. That's Caleb Downs last year, and he'll be even better this year. Matt Patricia, versatility is a big piece of his defensive scheme. What a great weapon to have in Caleb Downs. Put him down on the box. He can play high safety. You can play him as linebacker. And for both those guys to have your best players be your hardest workers, it's a blessing for the Buckeyes. I want to say one thing about the quarterbacks, though, Rick. What's going to be very interesting, when you look at Julian Sands, smaller guy, 6 foot tall, pocket passer. Then you look at Lincoln Kienholz, a multi-sport athlete, 6'3", a great runner. This offense has some fluidity to it. C.J. Stroud was not a runner. He was a pocket passer. That is the offense that Julian Sands is going to run. Will Howard, JT Barrett, probably not Justin Fields, but a little bit of that. That would be the offense that Lincoln Kienholz runs. So that's one thing I'm really interested to see this weekend and going forward. How different does the offense look depending on who's under center?
All right, before we take a break, any other new names or names that maybe will develop this year into stars or much bigger roles we've seen in the past for Ohio State?
I'm glad you asked. Max Clare, the tight end, most underrated pickup in the conference.
Transfer from Purdue.
I sit on the Mackey board. I think he's got a great chance to win this year. And the big reason why, when we're talking about Jeremiah Smith, we're talking about Carnell Tate, Brandon Innes, all these guys, defenses are going to have safety help. So you're talking about split safety defense. You're going to have to double team these guys, have to have help over top for your corners with the talent at wide receiver, which means Max Clare is going to be matched up on a linebacker.
Usually
with no
one-on-one.
help. And in Purdue, just the nature where they were at, opponents could put their best cover corner on Max Clare, and he still dominated and looked great. Now you're talking about Max Clare being the third or fourth option that defenses have to account for. He's going to cook every linebacker in the country. So that's a real underrated pickup to watch out for.
I mean, we could just keep naming names. You brought up Carnell Tate, who'd be the best wide receiver on 98% of the teams in Division I football, and we sometimes forget about him.
It's crazy, right?
Because of what else is in that wide receiver room. We get to see all of this coming weekend right here on the Big Ten Network, because Saturday our spring football coverage kicks off with the defending national champion Buckeyes inside the shoe. It's the Ohio State spring game Saturday, noon Eastern, 9 Pacific, only on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. The Enterprise Center in St. Louis, site of the 2025 Frozen Four and Penn State's first ever trip to college hockey's promised land. Nittany Lions face Boston University in the second of Thursday's national semis. Winner moves on to Saturday's national championship game. Time for your game leaders, fueled by Gatorade, as we measure the tail of the tape between Penn State and BU. Remarkably similar stats for both teams, not surprising at all when you consider both were struggling midway through the season before getting red hot at just the right time. Of course, something has to give later tonight in St. Louis, which is where we find Dan Kelly and Paul Caponigri.
Thanks, Rick. What a day for Penn State men's hockey here in St. Louis just 15 years ago. They were a club hockey program, but that's just half the story. This program was dead in the water in December, winless in their first 9 conference games, hovering around 40th in the pairwise. Cappy, they go 16-2-2 down the stretch to sneak into the tournament. Now they've clawed their way to their first Frozen Four appearance. How the heck did they do it?
I mean, it's remarkable, and I love this story because it's a different story. It's not the regular story that you're in a top 5 team all year. They had to come from out of nowhere, and we don't get sick of talking about it because it's so much fun. But I mean, it starts with the coaching, the confidence, and then elevation of young players. I think is kind of something that's not been talked about enough. But you put that all together, they got on a roll, and you talk about them Cinderella, but the way they played their last 15 games, they're playing like one of the top teams in the country. So I don't look at it as a Cinderella story anymore. I look at they deserve to be here, and they have just as good a chance as anybody else to win this.
Always helps to have a monster Russian goalie, Arseny Sergeyev, for Penn State. This guy's the real deal.
I love it, and we were watching him yesterday, right? And he just is out having fun. He's just happy to be there. I think his teammates just are mesmerized by that. And then obviously his play. I mean, he just makes them more confident as a team. He got injured in the middle of the season. That something to do with their rough stretch and conference play early. But he just solidifies their net, and he was the answer to them winning that game against UConn. He's made 28 saves in third period and overtime to get him to the Frozen Four.
Watching him kick the soccer ball yesterday around before practice, it's amazing. He's actually looks bigger without his equipment. You were a sniper back in the day at Ohio State. How intimidating is it to face a giant goalie like that?
I think anytime you see a bigger goalie, you start overthinking it, I think, more. You got to be more precise with your shot, and a lot of times when you do that, you end up missing the net or you put it right in his stomach. So I think that's kind of the thing with bigger goalies, and I think what makes goalies now, they're so big, but they're so athletic. They're just like those 5'10" guys. So Arseny Sergeyev is one of those guys that's big like that, but he's also super athletic.
The line of DeMarsico, Serrato, and J.J. Wiebusch, they have been lethal in the playoffs for Penn State. 2 freshmen and a sophomore, I might, on that line. The future looking pretty bright for the Nittany Lions.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I was talking about the young guys, along with a guy like Cade Christensen on the back end. But that line in the last 8 games is combined for 42 points. I mean, that is a ridiculous amount, and it makes you almost forget about a guy like Aiden Fink, who was, a top 10 Hobie Baker finalist. So that is where they have layers of offense now, Penn State, and that's really helped their team go.
And how about J.J. Wiebusch picks up the 7th ever hat trick in tournament history? And oh yeah, speaking of 7, he's got 7 playoff goals as a freshman. He's gotten better as the season's gone on.
He's the guy I think the most, because I thought Charlie Serrato was pretty good from the beginning of the season on. His scoring has gone up, but J.J. Wiebusch was a guy that Keith Fisher, their assistant coach, talked about preseason. That was a high skill guy, and you are seeing that finally. It's fun to see these freshmen click in the second half of the season. They're doing it at the right time.
Good news, bad news for Penn State. Aiden Fink, 54 points on the season, 23 regular season goals. He's goalless in 6 games in the playoffs, but he's due.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that you should be scared of if you're Boston University. And, he's playing a line with Reese Lawback and Danny Genev, who Danny Genev had a really good regional. If those guys can put some goals in, you have those top 2 lines, and they're getting some scoring from the bottom half. Dane Dowiak scored in the regional. So if you can get that line in there too, it just enhances their chances against BU.
Of course, the architect, the big boss, Guy Godelski, in his 13th season at the helm behind the bench for the Nittany Lions. You played for a lot of coaches with a lot of personalities. He's a unique guy. What makes him unique to you?
I mean, he's like a big teddy bear, right? But he also has a super intense guy. Even when they win, like you see him by the bench, you think he might crush one of his assistant coaches. But you could see how much he cares. And I think that's what players like to see, is how much their coach cares about the team and the players on the team. And he's super competitive. I mean, he's competitive at ping pong and darts and everything. So, he's a super nice guy, but his competitiveness comes out, and you see that with his team.
When you look at Penn State, their strength, they're the underdog in this matchup versus Boston University. How can they surprise BU and win this game?
I mean, I think they just have to play their game. I think the one thing is this is a new surrounding them, right? This is their first time in a Frozen Four. The nerves could be there. This is the 3rd consecutive year for BU, so a lot of their players are used to this. Early on, can they just stay in the game early, don't play nervous, get settled in? If they can do that without getting behind, I think they got a really good chance.
Yeah, this will be a big game tonight. Big opportunity for Penn State. They try to advance to the national championship game this Saturday night as they take on the BU Terriers tonight as we slap things back to Chicago.
The clock continues to wind closer to puck drop at the Frozen Four. Game 1 features defending national champ Denver and Western Michigan, setting the table for the nightcap between Penn State and BU. Let's head back to the Enterprise Center where Dan Kelly and Paul Caponigri are standing by.
Thanks, Rick. What a story to tell here in St. Louis as Penn State has made it to their first ever Frozen Four. This is after starting conference play. Winless in their first 9 games. It just speaks to the parity in the great Big Ten hockey conference. But they go 16-2-2 down the stretch to sneak into the tournament, and here we are in the Frozen Four. How did they get this done, Cappy?
It's about momentum, right, and confidence, and they got some. It's very fickle at times. It can go the other way, too. But they rode it, and they started winning, and then they started winning big games. I mean, their last 8 games have been against tournament teams, aside from Michigan, who was the first team out of the tournament. So all against top 15 teams. You keep winning those games, you are going to build confidence, and they're at the point now where they think they can beat anybody.
They're going to have to beat a good team in Boston University, making their 3rd straight Frozen Four appearance. They lost in the semifinals last year in overtime to the University of Denver. What makes them a dangerous team? They're a top 10 offense, just like Penn State.
Yeah, I think what makes them difficult is on the back end. And a lot of times you don't see that, but you're seeing it in the NHL with his older brother, Lane Hudson, in Montreal, Cale Makar, Quinn Hughes, former Michigan Wolverine, but Cole Hudson, Boston University, the freshman, is very similar to his brother, and he kind of stirs the straw of the drink for Boston University back there as a freshman. That's how incredible he is. But then they have depth up front. They don't have one superstar. His older brother, Quinn Hudson, you got 3 of them, by the way, at Boston University. There have been, but he has 50 points. They have depth there, but they don't have that one guy on the front end. They have him on the back end. I think that's what makes them unique. Because it can get a defense for Penn State a little bit off if their best player is a defenseman, but he's coming up in the rush a lot. There has to be a lot of communication on who's got who when you see that fourth guy coming up and he's a defenseman on the back end.
How about BU's head coach Jay Pandolfo? 7 Frozen Fours. 4 as a player for BU now, 3 straight as a coach. He won the national championship once as a player, just 1 for 7. I say that because he won 2 Stanley Cups as well.
Yes.
But that's incredible.
Yeah, and I had their team in regionals the last couple of years, and he just has an aura about him. You know, like there's certain coaches that have that buy into. He has that resume, right? And at the school, so NHL and at the college level, that his team's going to buy in, and then he has the right temperament. They did not play well in their conference tournament, and he let them have it. And that was kind of the first time I've heard him do that, and I think it was a good wake-up call for the team. And you saw it; they played really well. They didn't play well early against Ohio State, but they came back, scored 5 in the third period, won 8-3. So he's got them on the right path. It's very similar to Guy Gadowski. He's a player's coach, but he has control of that locker room.
If you're BU, are you concerned about the penalty kill? It seems to be their soft underbelly, just 78% on the penalty kill, and they're the most penalized team in college hockey, although you usually don't see penalties that much in these big playoff games.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be a big factor is special teams. What kind of game will the referees be calling? You know, if it's a tight game with not a lot of special teams, their penalty kill is not great, but their power play is really good. It's a top 5 power play. You saw it against Ohio State in the regional. It was really good. That can gain them momentum. So I think it'll be very interesting how the referees let it go. I think they want to let the players play, but at some point, if guys are taking penalties, you got to make the call. So that'll be. I think discipline is very key for Penn State against the Boston University team. You don't want to get into a ton of power plays for Boston University. And Penn State's power play has been pretty good. I mean, they had a chance against Maine in the first 20 seconds of it. They went boom, boom, and J.J. Weebush scored. So they can do it too. But I think I like Penn State in a game that's more 5-on-5 hockey.
Aiden Fink has gone pointless in the playoffs for Penn State. He's their leading goal scorer, but head coach Guy Gadowski says that's actually good news because the opposition knows that he's probably coming.
I mean, he's got to, right? And like, he does so many other things, too. Yes, he scores, and I think another reason why he's a great Hobie Baker candidate is he's their hardest worker. So when you see a guy like him, he goes diving after pucks, finishing his checks. He's not a big guy. He's 5'10", 165 pounds, but he puts it all on the line. And when you see your best player doing that, Dan, everybody gets on the bus when you see that. So he does more than just score, but obviously in a game like this, in a magnitude like this, you need your best players to contribute offensively too. So I look for Aiden Fink to, whether it's a goal or an assist, but I think he gets that line going tonight.
Lastly, do you agree with me, goaltender Arseny Sergeyev, if Penn State is to win tonight, he has to be their best player?
I mean, yes, just generally the cliche, right? And you would think that. I think, obviously, the biggest time would be on the power play. When BU's on the power play, he can make some key saves there. That is huge. But, yeah, the goaltender is always the biggest momentum swinger in a game, especially like this. So look for Arseny Sergeyev to be the most important guy.
Let's drop the puck in St. Louis for the Frozen Four. Big game tonight for Penn State. They try to advance to the national championship game as we slap things back to Chicago.
Doesn't matter if it's winter, autumn, or spring in the Twin Cities. If you go to a Minnesota football practice, and I've been to a bunch, the energy is constant. No wasted time or motion. It's a trademark of PJ Fleck style. It's helped lead the Gophers to 6 straight non-COVID season bowl games and 6 straight wins in those postseason matchups. And we are excited now to take you to the Twin Cities for the big interview. Say hello to PJ Fleck. PJ, always great to see you. First and foremost, how are things in Minneapolis these days?
Things are doing elite, Rick. Thanks for having us on the show on Masters weekend.
No question, one of my favorite weeks of the year. I'm actually going to get to golf with you in just 1 second, thanks to one of your former players, Tanner Morgan. We had Tanner with us earlier this week, and when we asked him to describe you, obviously said that you guys were and still are very close, but he used the term activator. What does that mean in your culture?
That's a great question. First of all, Tanner is one of the greatest players ever to play here, but more importantly, one of the better people ever to play here. And I think that's a credit to him. You know, I think people always look at me and they're like, oh, you're so motivating, or you are a motivator. I don't look at it that way. I love to surround myself with people who are very self-motivated first. And then I'm kind of like gasoline on the fire, right? That's the job, I think, of a head coach, is to activate the dream, activate where they want to go, and really hold them accountable for where they say they want to go, because that's really the job of a coach. It's not my dream. I can't have a bigger dream for them than they have for themselves. But my job as a coach is to hold them accountable for what they say they want, whether that's in recruiting or when they come in my office and I put the goals and dreams in front of us. But you're kind of like the architect as a head coach, but the players are like the builders. And I think that's where the relationship goes hand in hand.
And here's where we get to the golf question from Tanner, because he said you're still a sneaky good athlete, and he used golf as an example, saying you can just grab a club every now and then and pipe one down the middle, some 280, 300. He actually said it's really annoying. Is there any exaggeration to that statement?
The 280, 300 after 5 shoulder surgeries, that's an exaggeration. I think he's being very kind, straight down the fairway. That's not what I usually do. But I am athletic enough to get myself around the golf course. Whether it's par 4, par 5, it's usually not the same, but somehow the ball goes in the hole within 4 or 5 shots. Sometimes the way it's drawn up, sometimes you got to scramble and be an athlete, be creative, and find your way around the golf course. So I do see a lot of the courses, though, when I do play. That's for sure.
PJ, Tanner was such a rock for your team. This year, you're trying to discover right now who that guy will be at quarterback. So what's the latest on that competition under center?
Well, I love where our quarterbacks are. I think Greg Harbaugh's doing a really nice job. Keegan O'Hara, our quarterback coach, is doing a great job too. And I think Greg's so creative. He's got a great offensive mind, and he does what our players are capable of doing. And all of our quarterbacks give us something a little bit more unique. I think everybody's more familiar with Drake Lindsay and what he was able to do in high school and winning a state championship, and the highly touted Gatorade Player of the Year in the state of Arkansas. And him sitting behind Max Brosmer, I think, gave him a whole different perspective of not just what to do, but how to do it at the elite level. And I've never been around somebody who worked like Max Brosmer did. And that's a compliment, being around the Zach Terrells and the Tanner Morgans of the world. But this guy was on a completely different planet. And Drake and our other quarterbacks that were here got to learn from that. And I've watched the application from that, just how they've led the entire team, watching Drake mature through the process. You watch him process the information at the line of scrimmage. You just don't get the sense that he's a freshman. And I made this comment in a press conference yesterday, just saying that I think he's farther along than any quarterback I've ever had. Doesn't promise him anything, doesn't promise us anything, but it gives us the best chance if we continue to go on that trajectory. And he's taken a lot of what we're giving him and really, really handling it in an elite way.
Right now, the portal is such a huge piece for everyone, your team no exception, and surrounding the quarterback, those skill positions, and at the offensive line. I know you did a lot of work in the portal in those 3 rooms, running back room, receiver room, offensive line room, to make sure to get some experience and ability at those spots. How do you feel about where you are there?
Well, I feel like, our depth will be our strength. I think everybody right now in spring and April is just, you're looking at a 10-day portal window right in the crosshairs, right? And a few things are going to happen. One, you might have a little attrition, might happen to starters, might happen to depth, depending on, what people are valuing. But you really kind of look at it. If you can have a deep football team, you can make a run. And I think everybody, you look at all those teams that made the college football playoff last year, all of them were really deep. And it didn't matter who you were. You look at the NCAA tournament in basketball right now, the 4 teams that made it, or to the Elite 8 at least, they were all deep. And any one of them could have won. All those games were really close. So I think depth is critical in college athletics right now, more than anything. And I think retention is really important. I love what we've done with the offensive line. I love what we've done at the running back position, especially with Darius Taylor helping us in the pass game, probably more than any running back we've ever had, being a natural high school receiver that transitioned into being a running back. We've added some really good depth there with Cam Davis and A.J. Turner. I really like where we are in the wide receiver room. I think what's unique about our wide receiver room is we might be deeper than we've been in the past with a lot of playmakers, but a lot of people won't be familiar with who they are until they actually go out there on Saturdays, which is going to be really, really exciting with the addition of Javon Tracy and Logan Loya and the people that are developing within our program right now. And then adding Drew Bibber, the transfer from Purdue, which was huge for us, to add our Jamison Gears and that whole crew at tight end. I just love where we're at. But as you know, Rick, as well as I do, ask me in 20 days, and then I'll let you know exactly what I feel about our team when we kind of get at the end of this portal.
Right, and then ask you again the day before the season opener, because we all know how much can change before then as well. But before we transition to defense, PJ, I do want to touch on one player who there's been a lot of hype around because he may be playing on both sides of the ball. At least we've seen Coy Parrish with that split-colored jersey designating both offense and defense. What's the mindset right now in a process that I know is very early on?
Well, we decided to give him the split jersey. Our head equipment manager, Brady Gagnon, is an unbelievable seamstress. This guy can put anything together. It looks like Nike did it, but we were just tired of putting our practices, as you said, Rick, move so fast. We had to pull a jersey off, put a jersey on. We had to put a yellow on, an orange, a vest. And I'm like, just forget about it. You know me, I'm not as patient as most at practice. So we just decided to go with the split jersey. And of course he loved it. Now he's got different color gloves, different color shoes. He wants his helmet on one side. You know, he's taken it to a completely different level, but he is a unicorn when it comes to an athlete. He's only been here since June. I think people forget about that. He hasn't even been through a spring practice. Coy hasn't. And I think this is our opportunity that if he did come early, maybe we would have been able to experiment more with it. But when he got here in June, it was just like all defense. Then we hit the season and we're like, all right, we're going to do the return game. Then we got into the season. I was like, all right, let's dabble in offense. This has been the whole offseason about designing what we can do for him to impact the game at the highest level, whether that's offense, defense, special teams, doesn't matter. And he's at a point now where I think he can handle all that and not just a gadget guy. We're talking about true investment, which has to be on his part too, mentally, physically, and emotionally. But from our coaching staff, we've been fully invested into that. Now, when you look at our playmakers across the board, including him, we're deeper than we've ever been.
PJ, you'll have an open spring practice next Tuesday. The first one was for Dinkytown athletes. This one, I understand, for the public to come and view. What do you hope they see? What do you want your team to get out of it?
Well, I just want the pressure of the situation of having game day environment of people watching them. Now, people come to all of our practices. They're just open to different types of organizations and groups, especially in the NIL portal world where, you know, you want so many people being able to watch your team to help the community, from the community to come help your football team as well. But our players are always playing in front of people, but really getting them into the fans. We've gone to the stadium a bunch. We're heading to the stadium on Saturday for another type live scrimmage. So getting them around that type of the game day environment as much as possible is critical than just the spring game. So we've done more of that, I think, than we ever have. And we didn't, you know, we don't have a spring game, which we've done in the past. We haven't done in the past. We've canceled it because of snow, brought it into the indoor a bunch. But, you know, right now it's just giving them as many game day type environments around them and a different environment all the time. I think it's been critical for our development in the spring.
All right, PJ, let's finish here. I know you have a few home games to worry about first at the start of the year, but you do have a non-con road trip to Cal. And your conference road games are in Columbus, Iowa City, Eugene, and then here at Wrigley Field. Listen, they're all lovely places to visit in the fall, but you don't think you could have worked out a harder road schedule for your team this season?
I don't think anybody in our conference has anything that you could say is easy. Not one home game, not one a road game. You can't say that anymore. I had a hard time saying it in the past. It's impossible to say it now. Everybody has challenges. There is no perfect schedule. Our league is an absolute monster. We have 9 conference games. I'm just honored to be a head coach in this league and have the competition at that type of level that every single Saturday or Friday night, or Thursday, whenever we're playing and wherever we're playing, you better bring your best football or you'll be run out of the stadium. And I think that's where it's been so competitive this spring more than any other spring because we're already preparing for that. We know it. But right off the bat with Buffalo at home and then going on from there, you look at anybody in the Big Ten schedule, anybody could beat anyone. And I think that's what the new conference was looking for. I think that's what the expansion was looking for in the SEC and the Big Ten. And it's such a fun league to play in.
PJ Fleck, Gopher head coach. PJ, always great to catch up. Best of luck to you and the team with the rest of spring ball. Can't wait to see you go after that 7th straight bowl win this coming season. Thanks, PJ.
I appreciate it, Rick. Row the boat, Sky. Go Gophers. Thanks.
Take a look at the most players ever selected from one school in the history of the NFL draft. Now, in the modern era, it's Georgia back in 2022. You look at those teams from Texas, Notre Dame, USC, Notre Dame in days gone by. The year that Texas set the all-time record, there were actually 12 rounds in the draft, and there were 30 or more back in the 40s or 50s because, of course, we weren't dealing with free agency back then. Now, that being said, Ohio State has a chance to break that modern record set by Georgia a few years ago as Jake Butt rejoins us. How many Buckeyes do you think come off the board in the draft?
A lot. Real quick, I got a fun fact for you.
Okay.
My grandfather played for those Notre Dame teams back in the day. Yeah, he was played
That is
for
a fun
Frank
fact.
Leahy. He was one of Leahy's lads. Bob Lally played both ways. Yeah, he's in Ripley's Believe It or Not. He never lost a game from 7th grade all the way through college.
I do not believe it.
It's a fun fact for you there. There you
Mr.
go.
Ripley.
Yeah, also, he was a father. My mom was one of 16, so I got all the good facts for you. Yeah,
That is a
pretty
large
spectacular.
family when you get together for the extended family reunion.
Yes.
Let's dive into some of the players that are hoping to be picked, and maybe some that are not going to be first-round picks or close to being early, like a quarterback like Will Howard, who obviously showed what he can do in terms of leadership ability. But how does he project to the draft and to the NFL?
And he's one of the more interesting prospects in the entire draft. And John Gruden does his little breakdowns. Will was featured. I think he was the first guy that came out there. And it's just easy to fall in love with Will Howard. His NFL comp is Josh Allen. I'm not saying he's going to be an NFL
Hang on
MVP.
now.
I'm not saying he's going to make $500 million. But that's his comp because he's a big, strong, built quarterback that's a great athlete. We've seen him break off some key runs throughout his career. Remember, Josh Allen, the Josh Allen we see today isn't the Josh Allen of his rookie year. Remember, he had year one, he looked like a bust, 53% completion rate. Changed his throwing motion. Year 3, he got up to 70%. So Will Howard has some of those similar traits of big, strong athlete that can throw the ball. I thought Will got better as the season went on, similar to Josh Allen.
Now, I will say Josh Allen, though, during his career at Wyoming, was widely considered to be kind of a can't-miss prospect, even playing at a smaller school.
We're not saying that about Will.
Wasn't the case with Will Howard. I understand. I understand the comp. The comp doesn't mean he's going to be that guy. It means he has similar skill sets, similar athletic attributes.
But if he is, I said it here first. Right?
And then he owes you some of that $500 million that he ends up making. What about Emeka Egbuka, a guy who, when he was at Ohio State, was all about one thing: production.
Yeah.
You throw the ball in his direction, he's going to catch it. An unbelievable leader, and no matter where he lands, Jake, it's going to be a great locker room guy.
Yeah, chance to, he's one of those guys flirting with the first round. I've seen him mock first round, some second round. If Will is interesting, Emeka is safe. I think he's one of, if not the safest player in the draft. You know exactly what you're going to get. Ton of film at Ohio State of him doing everything. Played a lot of slot this year, but has also played outside. They sent him in motion. Great route runner. He's just a technician. He runs routes like a 10-year vet where he understands leverage, coverage, sits in the zones, clearly has a great relationship with whoever was the quarterback in Columbus. Underrated piece of his game, 2 things. Great blocker in the run game, very physical. And then he's got a background as a punt returner. So I think that shows up after the catch. He's good in maybe like some screen games. He feels comfortable navigating through defenses with the ball in his hands.
Let's go to the big guys up front. Ohio State's offensive line was really good last year despite all the injuries and shuffling of positional players. What about Josh Simmons?
First round, yeah. And had he not been injured, potentially the first tackle off the board. The good thing is long-term injuries are not a concern. He started something like 26 straight games going back to his time at San Diego State. Great size, great length, great athlete. He's really light on his feet. He's one of those guys that you can make the case of the best athlete on the field because he's 320 pounds but moves so light. And he just steadily got better. That's why the injury was so unfortunate, because he was trending in the right direction. But, I mean, he's got day one NFL starter cornerstone potential.
Donovan Jackson, another offensive lineman to watch from Ohio State in this year's draft. But let's finish with the defensive line. A lot of attention on J.Tutu Imoloau. We understand why. Jack Sawyer, who blew up throughout the college football playoff. but you and I are in agreement on this. We both believe that maybe the best draft prospect from that D-line is Tyleik Williams.
Maybe of all the guys in this year's draft, Tyleik probably has the highest ceiling, even past Emeka or Josh Simmons. I mean, talk about best athlete, he's that. He's 320, 330 pounds, but moves really well. There's some great clips where I think Akron threw a screen. There's Tyleik Williams inside, and he runs 30 yards like he's a wide receiver and goes and makes the play. But he's also physical, big bear paws on the inside. That interior position D tackle, ton of value. He's a stud.
Jake Butt is on the clock, and that will do it for this edition of Big Ten Today. As always, we appreciate the hang.